There's a lot of passion in there.
You.
Well, since you were getting all the hype, tell us about this fit you're wearing.
That was hype for me.
I think so. I heard your name yelled very loud.
Well,
Fan club.
you may have noticed I'm wearing a suit today. No, I'm not. It's a Nomatic suit. This is our new apparel we just launched, and Trig was just kind of complimenting on how comfortable and athletic I look. Not athletic at all, but this is our new jacket and pants. So if you're, want to try it on, come over. You could try it on at some point.
Only if you're your size, but
Yeah, if you're my size.
I asked, but I didn't think it was gonna fit. So
Jackets
I
for all
bailed on that.
speakers after the show, everybody.
Well, awesome. We're pumped to have you guys up here. Huge respect for all of you. Worked with two of you. Haven't worked with you yet, but we're going to.
Someday.
You guys have been doing this for a super long time, working with creators, building programs, ambassador, influencer, all the derivatives that lots of brands in the audience are probably trying to think about for themselves. What are you guys seeing as like the biggest trend right now? What's changing? Really just generally on that topic of influencer and creator.
I can start.
Yeah, just go down the row.
I think
We'll rally.
I've been doing influencer for 10 years, a little over 10 years, so I've seen a lot of trends and a lot of things changing in the space. And I feel like, 8 to 10 years ago, it was very easy. Just have an influencer talk about a product, you crash websites, you sell out, it works out amazing. But now you gotta be a little more creative because it's getting a lot more saturated. A lot of brands are getting in the space. So I feel like brands have to be creative in how they work with influencers. It's not enough to just send them product and cross your fingers. You have to put a little more thought into it, be a little more careful in how you choose creators, and develop a partnership that's meaningful for them and not just a mention in a video. Most creators are not looking for just that. They want more. They want a partnership. They want a relationship with a brand.
Yeah, I thought, I don't know if Jess is still in here. She was talking right before here, the founder of Mixers, and she was saying that, creators are humans. They're people. I think there's a lot of times there's the temptation to get this, list of people in a spreadsheet. You're doing some like media math on the thing, trying to figure out like, okay, like how many people are we going to reach? But in the end, they would like the relationship with you as a brand to be meaningful, right?
Yeah. They don't want it to be transactional. Like they're humans.
Yeah, and I think you hit on it. Like on the human aspect is that we've seen a lot of success bringing them along in the briefing, in the product detail, in the showing them how we want it to work. And I think they're demonstrating your product. Like bring them into your briefing process too. And I think the human aspect is something that we tend to forget because it is so transactional. But the one-to-one conversations, even working with their agents, all of that, they are human, and it's always helpful to get their feedback too, and help build really good content that way.
Yeah, the relationship thing is the key because for someone like us, it has to be authentic. It has to be like your values are driven. They're really aligned. It's the whole concept around real recognizes real because when it is transactional based, as we all know, you could totally tell. Like the Gwyneth thing. I was trying not to bring up a celebrity, but the Gwyneth thing, right? Where it's like just, hi, this is brought to you by XYZ. It comes across. I mean, humans could spot bullshit. Sorry, just had to say it, but it's real. Like you can see it. So if you don't have a real relationship, and I think this has happened for a long time, but because it was such a wild west that there's so much that turned transactional and everyone was a creator, and obviously the creator market's like, what's the number, like $21 billion or something insane these days, but it's coming back around where creators don't want to sell out. They don't want to feel like they sell out either, right? They want a real relationship that's a partnership that can grow instead of like a one-off transaction. And it might be different in like more of a commodity space than like a community space we're all in, but the relationship thing is definitely like key.
Well, that's kind of the distinction of like a real brand, right? If you're able to build a community, you're able to have long-term engagements with creators, that's an indication that you're a quality brand because you're attracting those type of creators to work with you. Do any of you have good examples of that right now? I know you're working on a couple. Happy to hear like how you put those deals together. How are they performing? Are they awesome? Were they super hard? I'm sure all of that.
Yeah, they're awesome. I feel like, you know, kind of going back to just, treating them like humans and picking the right creators. Ridge launched a partnership with Marcus Brownlee, if you're familiar with him, one of the biggest tech influencers. And that was awesome. And that was a special deal because he's getting, you know, a generous payout, but he's also getting like,
There's always a transaction.
there's always a transaction, but he's getting equity in Ridge. He's getting, you know, a seat on the board. He's way more than just like a spokesperson or way more than just a pretty face for the brand. Like he's a decision maker. We're developing products with him. He's talking to our product team. He's testing stuff and giving us feedback. So it's way more than just, hey, this video is sponsored by Ridge, here's a wallet. It's like, no, I built this. Like I gave my input and I'm a part of it. And I think that's what creators nowadays crave. They want more than just a transactional deal.
It's like, feels like ownership, but
Yeah.
even if it's not actual ownership, they're like, I'm in, dude.
I'm in, yeah.
They
Yeah.
want the transaction too, though.
Sure.
Right?
Get paid for
Need to
sure,
get paid.
for sure.
Your product
You
doesn't
have
pay
to
the
get paid.
bills.
Us too. Us too.
Sometimes.
No, but I think just to build on that, so I don't know how many people in the room are familiar with Dorel Juvenile. You might not know us from our parent company, but we have Maxi Cozy, Safety First, Tiny Love, Costco Kids. So if you're a parent, hopefully you're familiar with some of those brands.
I'm for sure there's a lot of minivans in this audience right now.
I mean, I hope
Me being
so.
one of them. If you have a minivan, we were talking about this earlier, you have her product.
So,
One of them.
but with that, you're talking to parents, right? You're talking to an audience that is stressed out. They want answers. They want reliability. They want it to feel very much like you're helping them. And so much of the content and the creators that we're looking for are just really real people and can identify with those parents, because if a parent can sense the sponsored by, I mean, they're out. They're moving on, right? They got enough stress. So I think the genuine one-to-one connection too is also something creators are looking for to build their longevity of their brand.
The best part is when you can get in with like a creator or influencer coming up and get in early and create that relationship. Like I've done this a few different times in different industries, and like the outdoor industry is a little bit different because you're like talking to professional athletes like Alex Honnold, the climber, or something like that. In this space where I think we all play in a little bit more, especially on the YouTube creators, podcasts, I mean, it's so broad and it's so massive. You can still find those people, and even if they're like at a medium to larger level, like for example, one of our dudes in the audience here, shout out Nate Benner, Director of Growth at Nomatic, crushes it. Don't ever try to steal him. For real? Just kidding. No, so he's been listening to this podcast, Modern Wisdom, with Chris Williamson for years, really, you know, just slowly building up that guy's audience. So he just like cold reached out to him. Chris got back to him, had a conversation, and was never starting out with a transaction. And this is how we all kind of do this. It's like, hey, let's get some product into your hand. We all make really good products, so we know it's going to work. Then let's have a couple conversations. Let's meet you here in Dallas and hang out for a few days and just build this relationship to see how this turns into. And I've never seen it not work like this. If you build that relationship and get with someone as they grow and you grow with them, you don't want to like milk it, but they're going to do way more for you than you ever asked. 100%. Right? Like this dude posts on social like once every 15 days or 14 days or something, totally organic. Like, I love my backpack.
I love sliding into the DMs. Like, I have no shame.
Yeah.
I apologize to my brand team because it like totally messes with their strategy. But you're right. I mean, just that one-to-one connection and addressing it just as a conversation. I mean, it can start from just an email, just a DM.
And he's like doubled since we've started working with him. And it's been like 7 months.
Love that.
I think real quick, what I love about that story is it's like he followed him, he listened to the podcast, he was very familiar with the content. So when he reached out, it's very authentic. Like he can speak to the brand that this creator has instead of just like, I mean, no one likes getting cold emails where it seems like the person knows nothing about you.
I see you have 2 million followers.
Yeah, exactly. Like you resonate with our brand, like just the copy paste stuff. It's like if you can send an authentic email that's like, I'm familiar with your content, I love it. This is why it's a good fit for our brand. You know, will you talk to me? You're going to get a lot more responses than just the copy and paste, you know, blanket.
Well, and I think I heard this on another podcast. I feel like we all are learning so much on podcasts. Is like people can also sense desperate energy, like very easily. And so I love that because I think there is so much genuine humanity in paying attention to that person's track and knowing something about them before you reach out.
Yeah, and creators feel it too, right? I one time got in a creator's inbox and they're getting 8,000 emails a day right? It's just, so it's crazy that one, they even find the email to respond to, or their manager does, or their agent does. But how do you break through that noise? It is not being desperate. It is being authentic. It's knowing what do they care about? What content do they produce? What's interesting to them? Make the fit obvious. Like, you have to pitch yourself. You're recruiting them. Yeah. You're not hoping that they apply for your brand. It's like, no, I love your content. Here's why you should work with us. Like, we're amazing. We'd love to find time, find space together. So you guys like started going down a little bit of a rabbit hole on some of like the tactics of like how you reach out. What are some of like your most painful, the things you don't like in kind of the influencer space or in the process of, running these programs? Like what people that are maybe don't have a program now, they're setting out on that adventure. What are the things to kind of watch out for or just prepare for some of that pain?
I mean, I feel like an obvious one that I think you guys would relate is like the whole chicken and egg when you start negotiating, right? What's your rate? Well, what's your budget? Well, what's your rate? Well, tell me your budget. It's like, well, it doesn't work like that. So like,
How
I mean,
The
contractors
last
work.
person to say a number loses or something?
Yeah.
Like you're like reading like negotiating
like,
books.
you waste so much time in trying to figure out, like, get the perfect price. It's like, in reality, as a brand, it's like, if you know what you'd pay for this channel, send them that offer. Like, if it's too high, well, you'll learn from it. If it's too low, they'll tell you. And so it's just like, I feel like that's a common thing that I hate, because I'll do that with managers all the time. Well, what's their rate? They're like, well, what's your budget? I'm like, you again, But it happens all the time. That's just a common, like, I'm sure you guys have seen it.
100%.
Yeah. I honestly, this happened to me recently, where I was talking to a potential creator, and I had met her. She taught a fitness class. It was a pop-up, and I met her, and she got pregnant. And so I stayed in touch with her through Instagram, slid into the DMs, and she was very interested, or at least seemed very interested. Then we got passed to the team, and then we got passed to the agents, and guess what? We haven't heard from her. So I think that's what's hard, is that sometimes you just don't know, like, did she even get pitched the opportunity? I don't know. Maybe she'll hit us up when she has a baby. We don't know. But I think the negotiating and the rates, and that, I think, Trig, what you were talking about just in the beginning, how much the landscape has changed, that I think is the biggest change, where you could just go and you could have a conversation, or you could just give product. And really, I mean, now it's creator economy. I mean, they know their worth, and some of them are absolutely worth it. Some of them are not, and they got really good agents.
Yeah, a lot of times they do not get pitched. Like,
I know, it makes me sad.
The agent never shows up to present the offer to them, because they have their own incentive, right, to create the deal as big as they possibly can make it. And the creator would be like, I'll do that for $20K. Let's go. I love that brand. Yeah. Right? But it's never presented. So it speaks to kind of the continued effort to, stay in the DMs, work the relationship, show up to the fitness class again, see if she's there. Like, well, I don't know. Like, there's probably an angle. It could still happen.
And so even sometimes when you can't work out a deal, remember, those agents aren't always going to be there forever. But the creator, it's their business, right? And so keeping in contact with people, because sometimes it does change. Like we were talking about this earlier. You may be working with a creator and say it's $5,000. That was a good example you had earlier, Greg. And then they get an agent, and all of a sudden it's like went up 5x. Like immediately, and you're like, what the crap? Or the other hard part is when you're trying to negotiate with someone and they're valuing themselves more based off what kind of you're looking at from a metric standpoint, and you don't want to be like a jerk about it. Be like, dude, you're pricing yourself out like 100%. You have said no examples of how this has worked, why you should demand this much money, but you just keep coming down, $500 less, and you take off this thing that we really wanted. And then you spend like 2 weeks doing this, and then you're like, it doesn't make any sense for us. And then you feel like a jerk, because you liked him, but then you don't want to not like him, but the whole situation kind of turned out lame. You know what I mean?
So you guys are talking a little bit about, how when you talk about price or negotiating or trying to get the right influencer, you're also talking about what are you using as the metric of success and selection? How do you guys each think about that? It's every brand's unique, every brand's in a different stage. And there's also different types of programs, right? Like if you're running pure play affiliate, okay, cool. You can measure that in its own way. You have an ambassador program. Maybe you're looking at like a content metric, like how many assets am I getting out of this program? When you're doing pure play influencer, how do you guys think about measuring that? How do you think about influencer selection, knowing that there's like real hard money going out on those deals? Where do you guys start in that? Is that part of the briefing process? What's the first step?
Well, we're very performance driven. So I'm looking for return on ad spend with all the creators I get. Although I do have a budget set aside for like awareness, because I feel like there is a lot of value if there is a big creator who I know probably won't convert, but he's going to get a ton of views, and like, okay, let's go out on a limb. And I also look at, like, if someone makes really compelling content, then I'll talk to my paid media team and say, hey, I'm thinking of working with this channel. They want a lot of money because it's usually a big creator. Are you willing to help foot the bill, and I'll get rights for 6 months or a year? And they're like, absolutely, let's go. And so then that's another angle I look at too, is like, am I going to get rights to this? Am I going to use it? Is this just awareness, or is this mainly performance? But we're pretty like 80% performance. I'm looking for return. I know what types of channels convert. I know what types of channels don't, and I look for those guys that are going to move the needle.
Yeah, I think for us, it's a mix of performance and test and learn a little bit, because I think that sometimes, especially with some of our brands, you get lost in the aesthetic, right? You get lost in what that creator's feed looks like, but their engagement is shit. So like, that's not necessarily, what you want to follow. I've had some of what we thought internally was like, ooh, not great quality content performed the best in terms of sales. So I would say, don't be afraid to kind of just test and learn. Set a budget, right? Set a budget, set a goal. But that's been really surprising, I think, for us lately.
Yeah, we've been on the same boat as there's performance side, and I think we went into influencers very much focused on performance at the beginning, just because being a digitally native brand, it's always about ROAS. And sometimes it totally works. Like, when we did this partnership with Peter McKinnon, which has like a signature line, like he posted about it, crushed, like awesome. But you can't lay that over on every single relationship for us, like, because there's going to be some. I'll give you an example. We worked with Dude Perfect. They were already using our gear, so it was a total like organic call that we got. They're like, hey, sponsor just backed out. We're doing travel stereotypes. Watch it. It's hilarious because we've all traveled. You've seen it. It's so good. They called us on set. And we're like, we literally are using your bags. Do you guys just want to sponsor this? So they gave us a killer deal. We're a small brand. It's not, you could go do those big Dude Perfect deals. You kind of got to get the homie deal. And so we went out with like a full direct model, but we're like, this is the most we've spent. We got to really figure out how to like milk everything we can out of this thing. But we still were looking at like a short-term attribution window in a way. Yeah. So we threw in a couple other things. We did like a trip around the world giveaway. They posted on social. It was in the description, integration, logo, all that kind of stuff in the YouTube video. And like looking at it from a short-term revenue standpoint, didn't work. I mean, their audience is a little younger than ours, but when we tracked it over a year with like post-purchase and those emails we got, we had 40,000 people enter the giveaway. Definitely paid for itself, but also at the same time, the video got 20 million views the first week. Right? We weren't considering that of like, hey, dude, we just got a Super Bowl commercial for, a 20th of the price or even less, So I think that kind of opened up our eyes a little bit for these different like awareness, consideration, conversion campaigns of what can these do and what do we need to do different to keep kind of that customer coming down this journey for us? Because we're in backpacks. Like, you're only going to buy a backpack every 5 to 7 years. But we're now in apparel, and you're going to buy lots of
Looks
our
so
apparel.
good.
Every quarter, different colors, different styles, different cuts.
Fits, look good.
Look athletic.
But so it's different, like with backpacks, or even like we're in wallet business, same thing is like how often you sell wallets. So when are these people in the market for wallets right now? There's going to be a long tail effect on a lot of things you do. Based off their audience, I think the long tail was a little longer than we were expecting using like direct ROAS. You know what I mean? But we definitely track that. I mean, we have to make decisions off that. We're a small business.
But James said something that I think is like fundamentally forgotten. Find the people who are already talking about you, or are already talking about your category, or are already talking about your competitors, because they'll likely want to work with you. And again, that could be a full-scale creator, or that could be someone with 200 followers, right? But their engagement potentially is there. Or you contact them for content and then you put paid behind it, right? So it's I want to say a loophole, but it's a good one, and I think we kind of forget that too. I mean, you already find your brand fans; they're a fan of you, so support them.
That's where we tell all brands to start. Like
I think you told me that, honestly.
Oh,
Trig gets credit
so
for
smart.
that.
So smart. I should be decent at this, doing it for like 12 years, but maybe I'm mid still. I don't know. What I'm hearing is basically it's the same and different for everyone, and you're always going to be a little bit wrong, and I think that has to be acceptable. I think to not like there's going to be some content that you do, there's going to be some partnerships that you do where you're like, that worked, but maybe not in the way I expected it to work. I like that we got a bunch of views. I think the other thing too is there's different stages of companies, right? Like they're in size, but also in distribution. Like if you're across a bunch of retailers the way that you are, if you're on multiple marketplaces, you have traffic running all over, you have to figure out a way to measure slightly different than just how many codes were redeemed. Of course, track that and look at that as a leading indicator. But you have to look at things like how much direct traffic increased? Did we have a bunch of organic spike on Amazon? Did we see anything else happening that is unique to a Dude Perfect video going live? That I think is really important, and a lot of brands will kind of write off influencer marketing by not measuring some of that stuff. So
I mean, simple one, Google search. You could just look when we posted the video and this little spike we had when the Dude Perfect video went live.
100%. So we started talking about some campaigns that you guys are running. We talked about some payment styles. How do you guys think about you've talked about free products and gifting. We've talked about flat rate. How do you guys mix in like the concepts around commissions? You mentioned the Peter McKinnon deal. You talked about Brownlee and his deal. And I know it sounded like there was like equity and a couple other components. Are you guys doing percentage of revenue? Are you guys looking at scaling those types of models? How does that mix into, UGC content versus, high-level influencer?
You go first.
I make you guys decide the order.
I feel like we don't do as much affiliate. We mainly do flat rate with creators. We've tested some. We're testing TikTok Shop. We're testing YouTube affiliate. We're testing some of those, but when we tried a true affiliate program, it just didn't work for our brand. And that maybe was the person running it. It maybe was a variety of factors, but where we have done like rev share type stuff is like we're launching a few influencer partner wallets coming up in a couple months, and
they kind of co-design.
Yeah, where like they design, how the wallet looks, and they're gonna kind of sell it to their viewers. And those are going to be like a rev share model where they get a percentage of all sales of the wallets.
It's like a royalty structure.
Exactly, like a royalty structure. But it's like sometimes we'll do view bonuses on videos. Like that's a good kind of safety net. If their views fluctuate a lot, I'll say I'll give you $5,000, but if you get 1 million views, I'll give you another $5,000. And sometimes that works as a negotiation tactic.
That's super smart, like incentive bonus.
Yeah.
Well, ours is are similar with like Peter. There's a royalty deal there, right? Like he's a partner of ours, and he's going to push it. And we want to make sure that he's compensated for that. You know what I mean? With the affiliate stuff, like we have an affiliate program, and sometimes we'll use a little bit of the affiliate stuff on the influencer stuff. But anyone that's in affiliate or PR and influencers, this weird Venn diagram right now where there's so much things that overlap. Like PR, for media, it's like so affiliate driven now. You know what I mean? And then you'll have some other different influencers, and it's really based off a tier system for us and like these different levels of like, hey, love what you're doing, love to work with you, but let's prove this out. And it may turn into something bigger, but we don't do a ton of that. There's a lot of it's like flat rate based on this that we're trying to achieve.
Yeah, I would say for us, it's so dependent on the brand. So with our portfolio of brands, the value of the product changes pretty drastically too. So we went from, on the most high-end brand that we have, Maxi Cozy, to being able just to give $800,000, worth of product away to being like, not good enough anymore. So it feels like we're learning as we go a little bit of like, what is that right mix? And I think where we found a really nice sweet spot is product gifting and somewhat of a flat rate to that creator. Especially if you're asking them, like for us, we ask for our shopper programs, our retail programs, we ask them to go in the store. You kind of also think about, okay, what am I really asking them to do, or what am I asking them to get out of their house, or what does that look like, and kind of take that into consideration as you're pricing it out with them. And that's worked really well for us in that micro macro space. And then celebrity product flat fee that works for everybody, all that.
I want to add something else on the product gifting, because I think this is kind of a hack that sometimes we overlook, because we go straight into like, hey, let's gift all these people things. But there's also people of influence, depending on the industry or market you're going into. Say music, for example, right? It might be hard to get straight to Travis Barker, but there's this producer that doesn't get free luggage all the time, that's going to love that, and that's going to influence these other people, and it really just helps like build credibility. It works in the music space very well. It works in other different industries too, but there's people that you're not going to see on social posting that has 300, 500,000 people, 20 million people, but they influence a lot of people that have those millions of followers.
We a while ago, like a few years ago, we couldn't get Joe Rogan, but we got all of his buddies. So when like he
Equals up to Joe Rogan.
Yeah, he's naturally like he's talked about Ridge like 4 or 5 times on his podcast. Like someone will pull out a bulky wallet, he's like, you need to get a Ridge, like you need to get a Ridge wallet. And I'm like, that's so awesome. Like, we can't, like, we weren't gonna pay for Joe, but like, hey, let's get his buddies and like get him very familiar with Ridge.
100%. Those of
Planting it on the podcast table every episode.
Yeah. You could even do it with retail buyers. I mean, it's a little creepy, but you're like, hey, this buyer's not returning our email. I found this is his brother-in-law that's into this tech thing that's really close to us. Let's send him some product.
Now we're really deep in the tactics.
I'm sorry.
This is awesome.
Don't forget about those of influence and influencers. They work together.
I think you guys are mentioning a couple cool things. I mean, a lot of we'll do this question in a second, but a lot of people starting out, there's a lot of anxiety around flat rate, just period, right? You're like, I don't know if this person's right. I don't even want to spend $500 if I don't know if they're going to perform, right? But
Still have that.
Yeah, I mean, it's
same.
generally anxious on all things spending with creators, I think is good, like natural thing to have. But you guys have done so much of it that you're actually articulating a really important point, which there's an arbitrage in understanding the value of a creator and just paying the rate, right? As opposed to like it, being fully performance-based and layered with like, something more complicated, like just getting like a good long-term relationship with them, a good rate, you can get a ton of performance out of it, and you're giving them what they want, and so you're gonna get more content out of it, which you mentioned and you mentioned as well.
Yeah, this is like one of my soapbox influencer moments.
Go off.
Send.
Because
Spotlight, please.
I'll stand up. No, but what I tell brands when I'm talking influencers, like, you need to fail fast. Like you need to like experiment, and if you're just trying to spend $1,000 a month, like you're not going to grow an influencer program. Like you have to spend money, you have to fail and find those channels that work. If you spend $50K and you find one channel in there that drives sales, and you can create a partnership over years and years and years, that person's going to drive hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of sales and make up for that $50K test partner. Like we have someone at Ridge who's brought in over $1 million of attributable revenue. And it's like, if you find one of those, it's like, that justifies all my testing in the future, because like, I'm gonna find this one creator. Like some brands just give up and, we spent $10K, we couldn't find anyone. It's like, well, you gotta keep looking, because when you find one, the return is gonna be well worth your time.
Well, and I think it's also diversifying the creator portfolio too. So, in the baby space that I'm in, we really look at, reaching the parent, but also talking to the advocate community, because you need that expertise to talk to the audience to help them, right? We talked about it. Parents, there's probably a lot of parents in this room. We're always stressed out. We need quick solutions. We need to understand. And I think that diversifying the different type of creator too can go a long way.
It's a funny, like, yeah, I always say, like, don't get locked into a niche either. Like, don't only be looking for this. We sponsored this, it's horrible. I don't want to even tell you guys the channel name, but he
Tell us.
pulls out like
Now you have to tell us.
ingrown toenails, and
Oh,
it's like
vomit.
zoomed in on toes, and I couldn't even like approve the content when it came in. But dude like got like a 200% ROAS or 300% ROAS when he went, and it was just like, I would have never thought if I told my CEO I'm sponsoring this toe doctor channel, he'd be like, you're out of your mind. But like, guess what? His viewers buy wallets, and they probably have kids, and they probably buy backpacks. And it's like, he's not getting sponsorship, so we got him for a great rate, and the return was incredible.
Toenail guy is
And it's
getting
the new Ridge,
sponsorship.
the new Ridge toenail clip
Yeah, the
coming
new
out soon.
spokesperson for Ridge.
That's how that little feature got put in there, right? Yeah, okay, I get it. So, I mean, someone may ask this question, but if you guys were, you know, maybe you know, your CEOs were giving you the task of like, hey, we want to launch a new brand.
Oh,
Like-
God.
Like, yeah, I've had to do this a few times. If you were just handed the keys, you're given, I don't know what the budget would be. Where would you start? What would be kind of the architecture that you would put together, the team that you'd put together? How would you think about it? You don't have to go into like massive detail, but like many people that come to a conference like this, they're either thinking about in that context or they're in the middle of those plans. I think it could be a lot of value hearing from you guys on that.
I mean, I would say consumer insights in so many different ways to get that, whether that's social listening, whether that's spending 3 hours on a TikTok rabbit hole. I mean, you can look at consumer insights very differently instead of just paying, you know, a huge company at mass dollars to get that. And I think if you know that who your target market is, you can design for your target market, whether that be product, whether that be comms, whether it be marketing. And it's available, it's free. It's available to all of us. And you can find it in different ways.
I mean, it's going to give me some more parameters. Do we have a $100 million budget? $2 grand? No, I'm just
I know
kidding.
I only answered a portion
Well,
of that
I mean, it kind
question.
of comes
Trygve.
down to that because sometimes, you know, if you're
$1 million, you have to spend it in a week. What do you buy?
a water park, and we're going to invite everyone to it. It's going to be the best activation ever. But I think, you know, the consumer insight thing is super important of like understanding who you're going to be talking to. And sometimes you might not know right off the bat. I mean, it's part of the reason we go to so many events is to like literally talk to people, whether they're our customer or they're just walk by and they're like, oh, what do you make? And then you start talking with them and they're like, this thing's amazing. Then you start talking to them more, right? And you get as much information as possible. And like, if you're a new brand, you're not going to be able to just call a bunch of customers. You're really just trying to get out there in front of people and really understand like that empathetic approach to marketing of how you're going to talk to this person. It's going to kind of like put you down a rabbit hole pretty quickly of who you need to be working with, where you need to be showing up at, you know, things like that. And some of it's going to cost money, like the consumer insight stuff. Yeah, you could go spend a couple $1 million.
Spend your whole budget.
You could spend it all, right? Or you can just get out there and get shit done and start and just learn from your mistakes pretty quickly and you'll understand pretty fast. But you just got to take a first step, honestly.
I would just add on that, what I would do along with consumer insights is just look at my competitors or look at similar products. Like, I'll be honest, I look at who Manscaped sponsors all the time. I know they have a similar audience to me. I know they're targeting, you know, male 25 plus like I am. So if I find a channel that they've sponsored 10 times, I'm pretty sure they convert. And I'm pretty sure if I reach out and like I can work with them and get a pretty good result. So
That's super smart. Well, we're supposed to do 15 minutes of Q&A. We're like at 10. So let's get started on that. Is there going to be a mic that goes out or do I? Okay, cool.
Trig
you
did
need to run.
drink pre-workout before standing up here, so if you don't want them handing around the mic.
Yeah,
and
I
Trig
can
will
run it
run
to
to
you.
you.
Run out.
Towards you.
No problem. We did a TikTok shop live stream with a supplement brand, and I drank some, and I'm like, I'm pretty jacked up.
Let's go on stage with pre-workout in my body.
Yeah.
Great. Okay. Do we have any questions from the audience?
Not that we can see you because those
Yeah.
lights are
They're
insanely
very
bright.
bright.
I don't know if
Right
we're
up there.
entering heaven right now or.
We are.
So we have e-commerce stores and we're on Amazon, and we're also in retail stores. So I was just wondering what your suggestions are on tracking conversions in retail, and then also how you structure commissions with affiliates that are moving the needle in retail. So
I can answer that. So I think for us, it's really hard to quantify from one to one, right? And you're gonna get pushback, especially from leadership, because it's really hard. But what I can tell you is if you can bring your sales team, if you can bring your execs or your stakeholders, whoever, on that journey and say, hey, we're going to present this to the merchants, or we're going to present this to, whoever that stakeholder is on the retailer side, this is going to be a halo effect, or we're going to look at impact of foot traffic, or we're going to look at POS, right? Like, it's not ever going to be a one-to-one until somebody figures it out. But that has helped with conversation when there is pushback. I don't think anyone has a full solve of one-to-one attribution. I hear it's coming, so stay tuned.
Put a tracker on their phone. It's super hard. I mean, there's like it's the whole, the tide rises all ship mentality when you're looking at, the revenue growth and contribution across the board and these different activations you're doing, right? But it's still really hard to tie it down into one thing. For us, like with Peter McKinnon, his name's on the bag, right? So it's a lot easier kind of to track, but that doesn't tell you the full story, right? Like if you're going in a camera store to buy a camera bag, you can mention I've heard it from Peter McKinnon. Most of the time that's what's happening, but sometimes the associate is selling the product more than the actual influencer ambassador. You know what I mean? There's other ways. It's like, I think, a little bit more basic to track things in retail, and that's how are you trying to capture that data from that customer. And that could be on your packaging, sign up for this, some giveaway, or something that you're trying to drive back. And maybe there's a post-purchase survey when they come back to the website based off, hey, you just bought this product, go enter the giveaway. It's over here. Hey, where did you hear about us? It's a little linear. It's not like as detailed and dialed, but I don't know. That's some of the stuff I'm excited for the future. It's going to get figured out to more of a science, but you don't want to just say trust it, because that's not it. There's got to be something you're tracking when you're spending dollars. And contribution helps, growth in those stores, reorders, because it's not just, if you have access to POS systems at big retailers, that's amazing. I'd love to have that information. Usually what we're seeing is, POs, right? They ordered here and they ordered here. Did that work? You know what I mean? Not the best answer. It's going to get figured out someday. Maybe Greg knows. I don't know.
That's roughly the best answer.
You got it? Trackers on their phone.
Okay, Heather, we have back right.
I am curious of some of the stories that you've had around interesting influencer. Curious around some of the interesting conversations that you've had with influencers that might have gone south, and what red flags do you look for, and how do you avoid some of those things? I think all of us have some stories, but without using names. But just curious what you look for, and how do you build kind of that structure around that to avoid situations and protect you as a brand?
Honestly, you can usually tell pretty quickly when you're starting to have conversations. Like if you follow your gut, once you've been doing this a long time, I mean, there's different industries we've been in that operate a little bit different, but your gut can usually tell you if this person's real, right? And if it's going to turn into like a transactional conversation pretty quickly, which then can turn sour based off negotiation and these things, So follow your gut. Honestly, like your gut's a lot smarter than most people give themselves. Like when you could tell when a relationship's going to go south, like once you start conversating with them. And it gets really weird sometimes. I haven't had a ton of experiences like this. I'm pretty outgoing. I'm like, yeah, man, let's do this. And you try to dive into like personal things and try to create a relationship, because that's what you're trying to do. But sometimes you could have a first, like for me, I'll have a first conversation, and if I'm starting to feel it, like this is going to be weird, like it will die right there. You know what I mean? Probably it's based off past experience and past lives. I don't know, but usually it's kind of a gut feeling. Sorry, that's not the best answer either, but.
I'll throw someone under the bus.
Spill the beans.
Savage.
Now, a big gaming creator, I'll tell you, JonTron, if you're familiar with his content, it's amazing content, he's hilarious. But when I was at an agency, I had this gaming client and this gaming launch, and it was really important that he post a video on this date. And leading up, like, he just was not responsive. From the initial email, it's just like very slow to respond, and I was like, I'm a little nervous. He's not going to post on the live date that he's supposed to post. And sure enough, he did not post on the live date he was supposed to post. And so I feel like if I'm the one driving the conversation, if I feel like I'm pulling the creator along, like that's just not going to be a good fit.
Did you get a pro rate? Did he like just?
Absolutely not. No. Like he was supposed to do 2 videos. He ended up doing 1 a couple days later, killed it, did amazing. And then we just killed the second video because he was like, next week, and he never posted it.
Kept going.
Yeah.
I mean, I would say you start with a clean contract for sure, that's fair. And if they're over negotiating your clean contract, your gut will tell you. Like, you can still do the deal, you can still do the contract, but you just know that it's very likely you're gonna have to go back and reference that paper. And I think if you ever have to reference the paper, there's a problem, right? No, we all sign things and check boxes to accept terms, fully intending to never read them or go back to them. So it's like the same principle. If you're gonna end up like having to go, you're like, well, I'm gonna have to go back and check on this and that. That's just red flags. You want it to be a fluid partnership. Agents, managers can drive some of that, but if it starts off pretty fair and you're not pulling too many terms from them, it should feel pretty easy to get the deal done. That's like one tactical way to trigger your gut.
And I would say also, you know, what is the time worth to you? So like, are you wanting to have that conversation, or are you looking for a really great partner in the influencer space from a management standpoint who can negotiate on your behalf? Because I know that I've only had to do it with a handful of influencers, and if I had to do it with more, I'd probably quit because it's exhausting. And so, you know, it's great to have really great partners in the space that can do that.
I want to add one story real quick about this one. This was a long time ago, so this is before of like, hey, post on social and things like this, right? This is more of like athlete ambassador driven. So we had a guy, he was a big time highliner, year contract, ambassador, paid him money, wasn't a ton of money. And so we sponsored this trip to Germany, and then he was going to Brazil to do this big highline thing. And this is the reason why I got out of skateboarding, because I didn't want to be a team manager managing kind of like prima donnas. And I kind of started feeling this on this project we were working on with, like it's kind of feeling a little weird. Like he's asking for a lot, not really giving. So we pay for his flight, right? This is like $2,500. We're a small business at the time. He missed his flight in Germany to Brazil, calls me the next morning, hungover. He missed it because he was partying. He's like, dude, I missed my flight. Hey, can you buy me another ticket to Brazil? I was like, absolutely not. You know what I mean? Like immediately I could tell, like this is gonna turn into one of those relationships that you're managing a kid. A little bit different than influencer, but it was like the gut feeling. Love the dude, still love the dude, but where he was at in his time of his life was not professional enough to really get what we were trying to do from a partnership standpoint. And then that breached the contract basically when he got back, and we didn't re-sign it. We basically cut the deal. We're like, dude, love you, but like we could already see where this is going. You're just not in a space where you're actually working for this. You're just kind of in party mode right now. You know what I mean? So it didn't turn sour where we hate each other. I still love the dude, but it just wasn't working.
And did it clean?
You know, yeah.
Do we want to take one more? Or we?
Yeah, we
One more?
maybe have time for one more. Any out there?
Last chance.
Last chance?
We did so good. No one
Answered
There
everyone's
is one?
questions.
Yes, one more.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry, quick question. So I feel like as a smaller brand, I know you guys were talking about some bigger influencers like Peter McKinnon, but it's almost the move to allocate that budget to a bunch of micro influencers around 100,000 or less that are getting like 20,000 views or more on Reels, like they're not buying their likes. Like, do you use any softwares or programs? Like I know there's like Grin and Shopify collabs that you'd recommend managing that at scale, or just curious about that?
I'll abstain.
Trig founded one of those.
I will say you are right. Like micro influencers convert better, and it's just safer. It's just a lot more of a manual process. It's going to take you time. So platforms definitely help. I've tried a few platforms that haven't fit my team's work style. So we do everything just very manually.
Yeah, I would say that we have tried some platforms very similar to Grin. The idea of unlimited content and being able to see it in one place, wonderful. If the content isn't wonderful, doesn't really matter.
We do both. Like we have a lot of the big relationship stuff, and a lot of times on this current software we're using, we'll move them over based off what happens, but it's still based off relationship building or creating content. Luckily, we sell camera bags. It's a small market. Don't think about getting into it, guys. But when you work with photographers, you get pretty awesome content. So it's a little bit different for us when they're like professional photographers. But we do that from a scalable side, but still relationship based, where we can manage it. And then you may graduate after that and turn into like a more like deep, hey, give me a phone call type of relationship. But I will say, early on in my career, I tried to create my own software system on a spreadsheet. I had 900 people I were tracking, and it was everything back to like birthdays and this address and this. When was the last time I reached out? So like when I left that business, I was like, here's this spreadsheet, guys. They're like, no, you can manage. They're like, you have ADD. You know what I mean? Because it was so big. So it is nice to have a software from a scalable side, but I still think it, you know, what I would say is, depending on what you sell, but there's still an authentic thing you have to have in a relationship, because it's easy to turn all those into transactional. But if you're trying to like get out there and fish a little bit and see which fish bites and which one's gonna work, right? It's worked for us, but again, it's not the only thing we use. We definitely do like those of influence, the one-on-one relationships, and this platform type of thing.
I'll go in a little bit, just because I know a bit about
You could
this.
hold back.
I couldn't. I think it depends on what you're doing. You can definitely do it in spreadsheets, especially if you're only
I don't
working
recommend
with
that
a
anymore.
handful of creators. But if you're going to run a scaled program where you have thousands of people and all sorts of different commission rates and different ways to track results, and you're trying to hunt down content for the paid media team, having evaluated hundreds of brands on this, there's two ways of doing it. You're either going to hire people to do that, or you'll use tech. The hiring people is fine. This is really expensive, and you might not hire the right person. And so starting from the beginning with some sort of tech structure is going to help you get to a huge program. If you don't want a huge program, you want to have like 100 top tier creators, I think you can do it. You can avoid it. But if you're going to have like affiliate program, ambassador, UGC, connecting that into the paid media team, I've never seen it scale perfectly without having a team of like 13 people. And then I always ask the brand, like, is this what your intention was, to have a huge team doing just these things? And usually the answer is no. If you're talking to, this level of person, they're like, I wish it wasn't like this. So it's my 2 cents on it.
I mean, to add to that, like the other thing, because when I did the spreadsheets, this was like 2011 and 12. Trig,
You might be a savant.
You
know?
didn't.
We don't know.
You didn't start current by that point. Kind of frustrating that I didn't start current. No, I'm just kidding. But from when you're searching for people, if you're like, hey, this is the audience we want to find, those tools are super helpful to like really narrow down like this person, like from a predictability side, or however deep you want to go in there. Like this person follows this person, and they're totally within our audience base. So it makes it a little easier. You could have less conversations just by narrowing it down to who you really think is going to align with your values.
Awesome. All right. Well, huge thank you to Chase, Greg, James, and Trig. Give them a round of applause.